This incredible story happened in the USA. When Julia met a German shepherd named Bronx at a local animal shelter, she decided to adopt him and take him into her new apartment. But the next morning she got a surprise. Bronx was lying next to her in bed, fast asleep. At first Julia ignored the incident and led Bronx back to his sleeping place on the fluffy carpet. But to her amazement, the same thing happened again over the next few days. No matter how much she tried to make Bronx understand that his place was on the carpet, he kept making his way back to bed. But Julia couldn't bring herself to scold Bronx or punish him for this seemingly innocent habit. Instead, she gradually accepted it as a charming quirk of her beloved pet. But a few weeks later, something strange happened that would change Julia's life forever. Julia suddenly felt extremely exhausted and lethargic, like she had never experienced before. Normally she was an active and healthy woman, so this change in mood was uncharacteristic. Even getting up became a strenuous task, although she had always been a morning person. Something had changed. Julia ignored it at first, thinking it was probably due to her monotonous work routine. However, as her well-being continued to deteriorate and she became weaker, she decided it was time to go to the doctor. The doctor ran a series of tests, but could not find anything unusual. Confused and frustrated, she told her about Bronx, hoping that this might provide some clue. She wasn't sure what kind, but it was worth a try. The doctor then made a momentous decision that would later turn out to be a serious mistake. Julia was most likely allergic to dog hair. For this reason, she prescribed her several medications to suppress her allergic reactions. The doctor also advised her to minimize contact with Bronx until the symptoms had subsided. It was strange, and Julia did not quite understand how she could now be allergic to dog hair, when she had tolerated being around dogs perfectly well for most of her life. The doctor patiently explained to her that such an allergy can occur at any time in life. Believing the doctor, she decided to follow her advice. The doctor also explained that Julia would have to give the dog away if her condition did not improve. The thought of this was horrifying for Julia. The dog meant everything to her. After the conversation, the woman returned home and stuck to her medication. She even tried to convince Bronx to stop sleeping in her bed. But that was easier said than done. He really wanted to lie with her, but Julia had to stand firm. For a few days she felt a certain relief. And Bronx finally obediently began to sleep in the hallway outside the bedroom. Julia admitted to herself that the doctor was probably right and that she actually had an allergy. And now she knew how to deal with it. But the relief was short-lived. Bronx occasionally sneaked back into bed at night and Julia's symptoms returned with a vengeance. In addition, her weakness got worse again. Because of her tired behavior, she almost lost her job. Julia was at a loss and didn't know where to turn for help. But this time even Bronx showed signs of discomfort. He walked with a strange gait and always curled up on his hind legs when he lay down next to Julia. Something was wrong. And she had to find out what it was. But she was just too exhausted to go to the vet and had to take a whole week off work. She thought a rest would help her. But without knowing it, she was risking her life. Thankfully there was hope in the form of a veterinarian friend who visited her. She was deeply concerned about Julia's critical condition. And when she found out that this all started after she adopted Bronx, she asked Julia to take the dog to a clinic to confirm or dispel her suspicions. Since she had hardly any other choice, Julia reluctantly agreed, hoping for an answer. The doctor ran all kinds of tests on Bronx and left no stone unturned in her search for answers. When the vet called a few days later with her test results, she found that Julia had contracted a dangerous disease called brucellosis from Bronx. Without special tests, it would have been impossible to detect this disease. It is a disease that goes on in secret and that he probably contracted it in the animal shelter. Through the close contact she had with her beloved pet, especially at night when they shared a bed, she had unknowingly exposed herself to this terrible disease. The vet urgently prescribed a strong antibiotic for Julia and Bronx and pointed out that if she waited any longer, there could be dire consequences. From joint problems and infertility to serious heart problems, anything was possible. Julia was horrified, but at the same time grateful that they had got to the bottom of the problem. She followed the vet's instructions carefully and started taking the medication immediately. She also made sure Bronx got his medicine. Over time, the strong antibiotics brought about a noticeable improvement and she felt less tired and exhausted. A few weeks later, further tests confirmed that the disease had completely disappeared. The day she found out, Julia breathed a sigh of relief and hugged Bronx, who had inadvertently almost cost her life. She was not angry, just relieved. And from that day on, she allowed her dog to sleep next to her on the big soft bed again. If this story touched you as much as it did us, you should watch this video. A boy hands a soldier a secret note. He reads it and immediately calls for backup. Click here to read the full story.